Good afternoon. How you doing? Your next presenter, Tim K.
What's going on? How's everyone's B-side been so far? You guys are not awake, are you? It's that post-lunch carb crash, right? Awesome. Well, let's get into it. My name's Tim. We're going to be talking about going dark with consumer electronics today. So, a little bit about me. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a Yinzer. 412 represent. Pittsburgh's the best city in the world. By day, I'm a security engineer. And I'm also at night, I'm the co-founder of Black Bear InfoSec. We do personal privacy management. We used to be a pen testing company. That doesn't work out so well sometimes. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the privacy problem. We're going to go over some essential tools you can use to take back some of your privacy. We're going to go through a practical example of how using those tools looks. Some try harder steps, some things that you can do to go the extra mile to really take back some of what you're giving away. And then hopefully, if I get through this in time, we should have plenty of time for some Q&A questions. Last time I gave this talk, we did Q&A for almost a half an hour. Don't worry, organizers, I hope that doesn't happen. But let's just jump into it. So let me ask a question. How many of you have Googled yourself? Okay, all of you narcissists, every single one of you. But no, what did you find when you Googled yourself? Probably, an old high school yearbook, your social media profile, your picture. Did anyone find their address? You don't have to raise your hands for that one. Did anyone find their address? Did anyone find their phone number? Did anyone find information that they didn't think they gave out, but is somehow magically on the web? I can tell you that I absolutely did. You can find my address, my social, all this information that I thought was kept safe. And apparently it's not. So let's talk about something real quick. We have you, right? And then we have everything you use to live your life, right? So your devices, your credit cards, you have your address. And then you have services. So places you're buying items from, software subscriptions. You probably have Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, Stranger Things Season 3 is something you're absolutely missing out on. But you're buying all this stuff constantly. And what that is doing is creating a unique profile of you. And we're going to put our tinfoil hats on. These companies are selling your data. That's a fact. It's winding up in databases like LexisNexis. It's winding up on Spokio, MyLife, and that's how all this information is winding up online. And what they're doing is they're using what I call primary keys. So primary keys are things like your phone number, your email address, your name, your address, your IP address, the IMEI of your phone number, your browser fingerprint. They're taking all of this information from disparate sources and putting it all together and compiling it to make a nice, beautiful profile of who you are, all right? So these companies are selling your information. But if you're sitting in this room, I'm assuming you're somewhat into gadgets, right? That's where you say yes. Right, okay, cool. So I love stuff like this. I adore this. I love that my washing machine will email me when the dryer is done. I love that I can check the temperature in my house from Washington, D.C. I want to be able to use all this. But all these devices require an account, and that is how they're getting your information. That's how you're providing these companies with your name, your address that they're then going on to sell. So what can we do to take back our privacy? To take back the information we're giving them, or at least mask it a little bit, right? Well, it's very, very simple. Don't use it. Questions. I got planned. We should have 40 minutes for questions, right? No. Okay. That's a farce. That's not actually the case, right? We want to be able to use these things. So we're going to do something that's called going dark. So this is what your life probably looks like right now. Well, what if I told you we could actually make it look like this. You would be able to set up fire breaks in your life so that every service and every login that you're using has information that is kind of about you in that you know the information, but it's not really you. New phone numbers, one-time use credit cards, even one-time use computers. That's all possible. We just need some essentials, okay? The first thing we need is a phone. I hate to say it, because the phones are the bane of my existence, but we need a phone, right? Now, it's gonna come down to a question of iPhone and Android. How many Android users do we have in the audience? You're gonna hate me. Okay. I hate to say it. It's not that Android is not secure, but there is a big difference between being secure and being private, and that's what we're talking about here. Android, if you look at the phone calls home that it makes when you're not doing anything, it is sending a whole lot of information about you back to Google. Thankfully, and I say that reluctantly, Apple has somewhat taken a stance for privacy. I don't mean that to say that they're good people. What I mean to say is they've found that as a financially viable option for their company, right? Now, if you want to use Android, I would honestly tell you to take a look at a project called Graphene OS. It's a fork of Copperhead OS. It's by the original dev. I say this with no amount of reluctance. Don't use Copperhead OS. There's a whole lot of drama around the original business owner and the developer, and I cannot guarantee that Copperhead OS is actually as secure as they claim it to be. But Graphene OS is private by design. It has all the hooks into Google pulled out of it for you. And you can use it. It's not usable in most instances because you have to have a specific set of hardware. It's only supported on, I believe it's only Pixels right now. But my point is, if I can't give this to a layperson and have them know what to do with it and how to make sure that the image hasn't been tampered with, and then I have to explain bootloaders and their eyes glaze over and they're in a coma by the time I'm done explaining it, that's not going to work for a privacy model, right? We need to make sure that these tools are easy to use, not just for people who are technically minded, but also for people who they don't care about this on a day-to-day basis, right? So you're probably thinking, Apple is expensive. It is, depending on what you buy, right? You don't need the latest and greatest in order to be private. And I'm going to be talking a lot about things you're going to need to buy or pay for or what have you. You shouldn't skimp when it comes to privacy, but this is one corner you can cut. The iPhone 6s. It's still supported under Apple's latest operating system, iOS 13. And you can usually pick it up for about, depending on the deal, $100 to $200, which I would say is a fairly low entry point to take back some of your privacy, right? Next, we need self-service, right? Because a phone is useless unless we have a phone number attached to it. So we need a SIM card. I'm going to mention a lot of companies. I am not sponsored by any of them. I want to make that disclaimer clear from the get-go. But I cannot say enough good things about Mint SIM. They do not ask for a whole lot of information upon activation, and they don't require any of that information to be validated. So you don't actually have to provide your real name and address. You can provide someone else's name or a fake name and maybe the address of a hotel as your address when activating. You'll need a SIM card, but don't worry. All we're really concerned about is the data usage on the SIM card. We're honestly never going to hand out the phone number attached to that SIM card. We want to avoid SIM swapping attacks. And you avoid that by not using the phone number that's attached to the SIM card. It also allows you the option to swap out your SIM cards regularly without having to hand out your phone number again to a bunch of your friends and family, right? There is another option. And that is to actually buy an iPod Touch. I almost said iPhone 5S. If you buy an iPod Touch, there's a group called the Calix Institute that will sell you a semi-anonymized hotspot for $600 a year. And all of the apps that I'm going to be talking about today, you can use on the iPod Touch and just pair it to the hotspot. It'll accomplish essentially the same thing without ever having to go through a cell carrier, which if you can avoid them, please do. So we have our phone. Let's go through our toolkit, which is really a series of apps and services that we're going to be using in order to maintain some level of privacy, right? So the first thing we need is a private email. So I'm assuming that everyone here has an email that they use for everything, right? You're giving your email out like it's candy on Halloween, right? Well, we need a new private email address. So the one thing we want to do is make sure that the private email provider is privacy focused. So don't go out and create a Gmail account. Please don't do that. Don't go out and, does Yahoo even provide email accounts anymore? I don't know, but they do? I'm not even touching that one. Okay. Blows my mind. What we're going to do is we're going to go find a new private email provider. We're going to create a new email address. Make sure you lock it down like you would a primary email address. Strong password, two-factor authentication. But more importantly, don't use it. Don't give it out. Don't let anyone know what it is. We're going to get to how you're actually going to access email with that account later, but don't give it out, right? Because that's one of the keys, the primary keys we talked about earlier that companies are pinging on and then selling your information with, right? As far as recommendations, if you go to privacytools.io, and I'll have a list of references in the slides at the end, you'll be able to find a list of privacy-focused email providers, and I can recommend personally the top 3. I'm a big fan of ProtonMail, I'm a big fan of disroot.org, and Tantanota, I think is how you pronounce it. They're fantastic. So we have our email. All right. Now we actually need to be able to receive email, right? Because we need to be able to sign up to services and we need to be able to receive activation emails. So we're going to use a tool called Blur. And what Blur allows you to do is create masked emails that are one-time use. So now every time you sign up for a new service, you're able to generate a one-time use email and have that email forward everything to that primary email we just created. This is how you avoid giving out your primary email. This is how you avoid creating that primary key. The other tool that you could use is called 33mail. The only reason why I don't mention this as the primary tool is because it allows you to create a 33mail subdomain that can be tracked. So instead of a unique identifying email for every service, you would create like Spotify at tim.33mail.com, and that subdomain, that tim@33mail.com, that can be used as a primary key because it looks so unique. So we're able to send and receive email. Now we need to be able to pay for stuff, right? Because a lot of these services cost money. Right? Or you could do, I guess you could sign up for Netflix with a new email every single month, but that's tedious, right? We got to pay for stuff. So we're going to use privacy. Privacy allows you to create single-use or single-service credit cards. It's legal, believe it or not, and it allows you to provide fake information to these companies. So when you sign up for Netflix, you don't have to use your name. You can be John Doe, use your Blur email address and a privacy.com card, and they'll never know who you actually are. Not only does it prevent you from having to provide any real information to the company you're buying from, it also allows your bank, it doesn't allow your bank to see anything that you bought with those credit cards, right? So as far as my bank is concerned, I shop at the NSA gift shop for everything. I get phone calls about that regularly. Great, so we can make purchases with privacy.com. Next is probably the most critical part, right? We haven't talked about a phone number yet, and we needed a phone. So what we're going to use is a tool by a company called MySudo. MySudo allows you to create multiple identities with phone numbers and emails attached to them. So this is another way you can mask your email. It does allow for communication with non-sudo users. You do have to pay for that. But it allows you to replace your primary phone number. It also allows you to replace all your phone numbers. For example, I have it set up so that I have a personal phone number, as well as a phone number for shopping, as well as a phone number that I provide for two-factor authentication. You can use it with Twitter so that your Twitter, when Twitter gets hacked invariably, your number isn't leaked out into the ether, right? I will say this though, you will still need to keep a hold of your old phone number. You don't want to just let that go because you've been living your life up to this point. Phone calls are going to that old number. Insurance companies, debt collectors, credit card companies are still calling that phone number. You don't want to release that phone number back into the pool to have someone else get it and potentially receive phone calls about you and not them, right? And this is the only time I'll recommend a Google service because Google Voice is fantastic for this. Google Voice will allow you to port your phone number to Google Voice for $25 and then forward your Google Voice messages wherever you want. So what I do is I had an old Gmail account, and you're going to want to do this with an account you already have. If you open up a new Gmail account and try to port a phone number in it, they're going to think it's for spam. And the last thing you want to do is go through all this trouble and then still lose access to your phone number. So if you have a Gmail account, which you probably do, you can go ahead and port your phone number to Gmail and forward your message notifications to your new phone number, and then be able to reach out of band of Google Voice to those phone numbers and let them know that your information has changed. Okay, so we have our toolkit, and this is the bare essentials. So let's walk through what this all looks like in usage, right? So remember, this is what we have before, this messy web of blah that anyone can identify because it's wildly fingerprintable. And we're going to this. Okay, so you get, or win, and at one of the vendors, you get a new Echo Plus, right? You're super excited, but you're like, but that records me, right? You don't want to give it any of your real information, but you want to set it up because you want to get those live weather updates and stream Baby Shark, you know, and be able to speak to that again in your kitchen, right? Okay. So here's what we do. The Echo is tied to an Amazon account. So we need to create a new private Amazon account. And we do that with an email address from Blur. So we go to sign up. We punch in a bunch of fake information and give it a strong password. And then Blur is going to go ahead and forward that email to our private email, in Proton Mail in this case. So we need to be able to verify that email. So we'll log into Proton Mail, get the verification code, and now we have an email account set up and verified inside of Amazon with not our real information. Now we need to give it a phone number because now Amazon's texting you when its packages are on its way and they need to verify your, I don't know, whatever. The point is they're going to want to text you, so you need to give them a phone number. So that's where we're going to use MySudo. Now, MySudo, we're going to go in, we're going to create a phone number, create a new identity, and Amazon will happily pass along the second factor code. So now we have two-factor auth enabled on our Amazon account. Amazon doesn't know any real information about us, but we want to be able to make purchases with this Amazon Echo. I want to be able to yell across the room that I need more diapers, and I want Amazon to know to buy more diapers and send them to my house. That's where privacy comes in. So we'll create a new privacy.com card. That is an actual card. That's live. If you use it, you get $10. Go ahead. Take a picture of that. But you can see Amazon is more than happy to accept it as well. So now we have a fully configured Amazon Echo that we can use to make purchases, to query Alexa, and it doesn't have any actual real information about me, unless, of course, you say something identifying in front of Alexa, But that's a whole other scenario, right? And that's it, right? Now you're private. Right? That should be it. I'm sure some of you are already going, well, wait a minute. You're right, you're not done yet. And these are the insane extra steps that you will have to take, right? So the first things first, your ISP. Your IP address is identifiable. That's one of the primary keys we identified at the beginning, right? So you're going to want to use a VPN. Now, I know that Nord is the largest VPN provider on here. This was before everything happened over the weekend. Now, you'll hear a bunch of people give recommendations for VPNs, right? If you listen to Wirecutter, they recommend TunnelBear. If you listen to privacytools.io, they're going to recommend Mullvad. There's a list of IP addresses as long as your arm, right? My criteria for VPN providers is I don't want to provide them with any information. Not that I have to, but because of the steps we outlined earlier, but the less information they know about me, the better. The ones I really like are ExpressVPN and I think it's on here, down in the corner, private internet access. They are tested in court as not actually having any information about you. The US government has come in and raided their offices and said, give us information, and they said, my guy, I ain't got anything. They've got payment information maybe, but that's about it. They do not have connection logs, which is key. The one thing I will say about VPNs, pay for it. They're not making money by selling your data. You need to pay for it. Otherwise, they will make money by selling your data, right? So you have a VPN, great, you can install the app everywhere, but what if you just want everything from your home network going out over that VPN all the time? Because there's not a VPN app for the Amazon Echo or the Google Home devices or the Nest device in your house. There's not a VPN service for that, right? So that's where we get into a little home networking. As far as software is concerned, I'm a big fan of OpenSense and pfSense. Pick your poison, they're functionally the same thing. But you're going to need some, not specialized, but it's not going to be hardware that you can buy off the shelf at Best Buy or Micro Center. Actually, maybe Micro Center. Now that I think about it, the brands you're going to want to look at as far as hardware is Protectly. They design router hardware specifically for pfSense and OpenSense. I've also run this off of an Intel NUC, like the real bare bones one and a USB 3 adapter. The speeds are terrible, but it's doable. eBay hardware, this is the only time I'll recommend buying used. eBay hardware, you can pick up an old server for 50 bucks and it'll run pfSense like a dream. Basically, you need 2 NICs and 4 gigs of RAM and storage space for logs. So like you could run this with an old like Fireball 2 gig plugged into a computer, if anyone remembers those. But that will allow you to route all of your traffic on your network over a VPN. So now, instead of calling home from your IP address, your Echo, your Google software, your Apple stuff is all phoning home from a private VPN, right? We talked about browser fingerprinting. You're going to need a new laptop probably. The one that you have currently is you've already leaked data about it by logging into your accounts that have already leaked. You're going to need a new laptop. My recommendations are, here we go again, the PC Mac battle. You're going to want to look at old Lenovo's or brand new MacBooks. Macs are if you want the latest and greatest hardware. Lenovo's is if you want to cheap out, right? You can pick up a Lenovo X220 for anywhere between 100 to 200 bucks and get rid of all the proprietary software on it, including the BIOS. There's a great tool called Coreboot. That's a whole other talk entirely. That'll remove all the proprietary software. You can have a true free laptop or just buy a Mac and it'll work. OS, this is something we need to be very careful about, right? Windows 10 is a privacy nightmare. Just don't use it. don't even bother. And I don't have a whole lot of great things to say about Mac OS either. It's not deliberately evil, it just is stupid. So really, the option is we're going to probably be installing a flavor of Linux. For you day-to-day users, the ones that are kind of interested in taking back your privacy but don't want to go overboard, Debian is the way to go, 110%. You can get a hardened Debian instance in minutes. If you want to be a freak like me, QUBES is the way to go. QUBES allows you to do with VMs and with VMs the same thing we just did with, 5 or 6 different tools. You would have a VM for each each vertical in your life. So you'd have your personal VM, you would have a business VM, a secure VM where all your passwords are. It's fantastic, and it allows you to route traffic for different VMs over different VPNs. It's nuts, and also warrants its own talk. But that's if you really, really, really are concerned about being private. I do not recommend Tails because of the ephemerality of it, right? It's supposed to be used as a one and done sort of deal. That's nothing maintainable in the long term. And finally, let's talk about services, right? Because this is where they really, really get you, right? Netflix, you're using Dropbox, you're using Mint, you're using Google Drive, you're using Todoist, you got all this stuff you want to manage and share, and I get that. This stuff is awesome too. I can't recommend this enough. Just self-host it. Don't even bother giving them fake information. Don't give them any information, because you are the product, and if you leave, these companies have to find another viable business model, and hopefully, like Apple, they will do that by investing in privacy and changing their terms of service. There are plenty of options out there for you to self-host and replace almost all of these services, and they're all active. And this is one of the areas where you don't have to put a lot in to get a whole lot out. I want to pimp one project that I have no affiliation with, but I just absolutely adore. HomeLab OS, it's by Nick Busey. You can find it on GitLab. It allows you to spin up a self-hosted environment with most of these services in minutes, and it allows you to run it on a Raspberry Pi. It's incredible. And just doing that alone allows you to take back so much stuff from all of these services. You can rip all of these out of your life and really own your data, truly. Let's take some time real quick, though, to talk about cons, because there are some big ones. First of all, not all services are going to like your disposable phone numbers. That's why I recommend self-hosting. They identify them as temporary, and they'll kick them back real quick, which I think Facebook is starting to do. Not all companies are going to like those prepaid credit cards from privacy. They'll kick them back. They'll think it's fraud. You'll have to upload your ID. That defeats the entire purpose of what you're doing in the first place. There is an added complexity to your life, because now instead of having to remember your name, you have to remember your name and the fake name you gave Netflix and the fake name you gave your ISP and the fake name you gave the grocery store. If I die today, my wife will have no idea what to do. She's gonna lose the house, because there's no way she's gonna be able to pay any of the bills. And to one of my final points, it doesn't account for anyone else. You can be as private as you want, but if you're not on Facebook and your grandma still uploads a photo of you and puts your whole name in the photo description, that blows this out completely, right? But there's really two big things I want to talk about, and that's privacy fatigue and money. I'm sure that you guys probably all think that this is, actually, you guys probably think that this is probably a good idea, right? But it is complex, and it's hard to remember all of this all the time, especially if I have 3 kids. I'm not going to remember this all the time, and I have screwed up. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is I shouldn't have to remember all of this, right? I shouldn't have to do all this work in order to maintain my privacy. The other thing is money. We've been talking about a lot of services. We've been talking about a lot of things that I'm recommending you pay for. I don't want to do that. I don't think privacy should be kept behind a paywall. This graphic is produced by the lovely Rachel Lamp. She works with a group called Badass that is not related to this conversation at all. They help women fight revenge porn. Neither here nor there, but she created this wonderful graphic. You shouldn't have to pay for this. And more importantly, the fact that you do have to pay for this, we all here have the means and ability to do that, but some of the more vulnerable members of our society don't. Think about the people that are in low-income homes, right? They're not going to have the availability to just go out and buy new devices. They're going and buying, the Android phone that they can find and afford. Think about your grandparents. They're not going to be able to spin up a server. It's unfortunate that this is where we've landed with these services. And hopefully, if enough of us have conversations about this with loved ones, or like, I self-host a ton of stuff for my family. I'm slowly working on getting my mom to let go of her stranglehold on Snapchat. But it's doable. You just have to have a conversation, and I encourage you to. But that's where I'm going to leave it. Here are all my resources that I provided. I know if you want to take pictures, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll put these up on my Twitter for you guys to download. I also want to give a shout out to the Privacy, Security, and OSINT podcast. If you think that this was not enough, if you think you want to make your lives even more difficult than they already are, give this guy a listen. You'll be putting the tinfoil hat on with me after one episode. The guy's name is Michael Bazzelli. He's fantastic. I can't recommend him enough. And that's my time. I think that leaves us with 20 minutes for questions. Thank you.
All right, if you've got questions, I'm going to come back with the mic because we're recording this, so please use the mic.
I do have one quick recommendation, if we can. If we could alternate between people who identify as male or non-binary and women, people who identify as female or non-binary. Otherwise, it's going to be a sausage fest. But anyway, I think we have a question in the back.
Real quick.
Absolutely.
What address did you use for your shipping address for Amazon?
Pardon?
What address did you have Amazon ship your stuff to?
I'm having trouble hearing
When
that.
you created the Amazon account?
Yes.
Where did they ship your products?
Oh, okay. This is a fun one. Because this is a whole other topic completely. I can talk about privacy in the digital world. In the physical world, it's even more difficult, right? Because you are giving them fake information. If you want stuff to get to you, you have to give them an address, right? So that is something I'm actually working on the follow-up to this talk on. There's a way to be declared a digital native, sort of like truck drivers, and move your permanent address to South Dakota, put your house in a trust so no one can find your actual address, and then forward your mail from your primary address in South Dakota to a P.O. box that then forwards to a UPS box. It's complicated, and I don't have all the details yet, but it is something that you're absolutely right. That is a problem. If you want to receive information, or like the packages that you ordered, you're still going to have to give out your home address until I come up with a better alternative.
So we've got one here, but is there a female with a question?
No?
No.
Cool, that's fine. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm late, so
That's okay.
do you have your presentation online somewhere?
You know what? I will have it pinned on my Twitter. Let me pull that. Let's go. Let's read. Blah, 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 blah. I know there's probably a faster way to do this, but All those nights playing video games finally paying off. There we go. I'll pin it on my Twitter. It'll be a pinned tweet after the conference ends. So you'll be able to find it on my Twitter at Timmy Doomsday.
Hey, I got a comment and a question.
Sure.
Comment was, I've read that book from that Michael Bazzelli. He got a couple of different books, but two of them I read was How to Reclaim Your Life and Disappear, something like that, in Digital America. I just got it from Amazon a couple of days ago, whatever.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you can go back to the links and everything you're going to show. That was my question. And then the comment also is, I know the guy Michael Bazzelli refers back to J.J. Luna, who also wrote a book. I don't know how many people are familiar with him, How to Be Invisible also. Mm-hmm. And in that book, he talked about having ghost drop addresses. And
yes.
What he said what you can do essentially is, I don't know if you're good and you're close with a church, but you can tithe. You go down to the church, you say, hey, I got to go out of town for a few weeks. Can you just accept some packages for me? And basically have the packages mailed to the church. That's how you do it.
That is awesome. I will absolutely have to put that in my back pocket. I will absolutely have to put that in my back pocket. Oh, back to my, yep. Let me see here. And da 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 da. All right. Boom, resources. Any other questions?
Any females? It's your turn. No? Okay.
Nope.
Do you recommend any like opt-out sources for your home address? Like you mentioned, like, you know, everything's on Spokeo, LexisNexis, etc. I mean, I've done it manually.
Yeah.
And it takes forever of whack-a-mole.
It does take forever, and it is something that this is the other thing. You shouldn't have to pay to have this stuff removed, but that's honestly the easiest way. The company that produces Blur, it's a company called Abine. They also have another privacy product called Delete Me. I think it's $250 a year, and it will do exactly what you're looking for. You give them your personal information, and they will go through and start removing it from all of these websites. As far as I know, no, not yet. The other thing I will say, and I forgot to mention this during my presentation, is please, 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 with sugar on top, read everyone's privacy policy. I've read all the services that I've recommended. I've read all their privacy policies. I know that they're making money somehow, and I know that it's not by selling my information, but I don't expect you to just blindly trust some dude you heard at a talk and go and use these services. Please, I encourage you to read their privacy policy.
So you mentioned like Blur, Privacy, MySudo. I was wondering, you know, it seems like in order to do this effort, you're placing a lot of trust in third-party services and things like that. And I was wondering what the privacy model is with regard to those type of services. So
let's put it this way. If it's companies or motivated individuals, like if you're worried about getting swatted, most of this stuff is in your wheelhouse. This will help you a lot. If you're the target of any three-letter organizations, some of which may or may not be in the lobby, or have employees in this room, I can't help you, my dude. I can't. I'm sorry. That's outside of the privacy model for this. This is more for people who aren't actively committing crimes. You would want to talk, if you're the target of a nation state, don't talk to me. I don't want any connection. Yeah.
Exactly what I had in mind. I was like thinking more along the lines of like, you know, what information and what trust do you place in them? Like, is it are those services completely anonymous? You know, how do they sort of like, you know, provide you with those, you know?
Right. So, yeah, right. So that's why I say read the privacy policy. But the other thing is that these are companies that have built their business model on making sure that you stay private. So yes, you do have to provide them with information. I know privacy, if you want to make payments with privacy, you do have to give them your bank information, right? If you want to be able to make payments, they need some sort of funding source, and it's usually your bank account. I would argue that these companies are better positioned to take care of your privacy because that is their selling point. That is the entirety of their existence, is not to help you make payments. It's to help you make payments privately. That isn't to say that they can't be hacked or they haven't been breached. I'm just saying that these companies are more likely to take the extra steps needed to ensure their security as opposed to just checking a box. Does that answer your question? Cool.
I don't know if you went over this during the presentation, but do you have any recommendations for text messaging apps like Signal versus Telegram versus iMessage, something along those lines?
So here's what I will say regarding messaging apps. Use the best method that you can. MySudo will allow you to do text messages and MMS. You will, though, appear, it is still sending over text message, right? So it's not encrypted. The thing I don't like about Signal is you do have to provide them with a phone number to activate, which allows them to create a pivot point on who that phone number is contacting. The one I will recommend is Wire. If you go to wire.com and actually sign up on wire.com, not on the app, they do not require a phone number for you to sign up for that service. And that will allow you to communicate with people without having to give out your phone number. But honestly, like if you can get your mom using Telegram, use Telegram. If you can get your friends using WhatsApp, it's better than using plain old text messages. It really comes down to whatever you can get people using and move that conversation forward, you know? If you can get your family and friends using Signal for a little bit, maybe you can then have a conversation saying, hey, you know what, Signal isn't really working anymore. It's not as secure as it used to be. Here's this new platform. But honestly, if you can get people using anything other than the stock apps, you're better off.
Do we have any other questions? If not, okay. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.